Boring history for sleep. Ancient Rome before you allow yourself to close your eyes and surrender to the gentle embrace of sleep. I invite you to take one more. The slowest and most soothing journey into the past. We will walk through times where every shadow is calm, every sound dissolves into the night silence, and the events of antiquity seem eternal, like stars under the serene Roman sky. Today, we will bring our slow tale of ancient Rome to a close, so that boring history for sleep becomes your perfect companion for a peaceful rest. The birth of a great symbol, the temple of Jupiter Capitolinus amid soft hills, where the early morning mists ripple above the ground. One of the 7 sacred hills rose, the Capitoline. It was here, when the world was younger, that the Romans built the temple of Jupiter Capitolinus. This was not just a sanctuary. It was a symbol of fate and sacred protection for the city, which was gradually turning from an anonymous settlement into the eternal city. A city whose story is an endless song of time. During the period when Rome was ruled by the Etruscan kings of the Tarquin dynasty, when daily life was steeped in rituals, mysteries, and fears, the Romans began constructing a majestic temple on the Capitoline. Archaeologists have found many coins depicting the temple, showing its silhouette with a pediment and a quadriga to powerful horse figures rushing into eternity. Such images were meant to remind Romans of the might of their protector. Rarely nowadays does anyone think that Jupiter was once not only a Roman god, but before that an Etruscan deity with the name Tim. Along with him, the temple pantheon included Uni, the goddess of family love, and Minerva, the guardian of wisdom. The temple lasted through time, putting to sleep and combining the traditions of the ancestors, their fears, and their hopes for strong patron gods. Inside the temple stood a colossal statue of Jupiter by Master Vulca, made of gold and ivory plates. The statue was so large that against the background of the soft glow of the lamps it seemed alive, staring at the visitors and at the same time disappearing far away. Ceremonies and rituals as a slow dance of time, the celebrations held at the foot of the Capitol were immersed in a special, soporific magic. Romans slowly marched to the temple during festivals and ceremonies, often in white togas, carrying gifts and incense. Particularly significant was the rite of triumph, the procession of the victor leading the troops through city streets strewn with flowers. This inspired a slow growth of tradition, repeating the same rituals year after year, like the crashing of waves against a serene shore. The very attitude towards victories also became peculiar. The victory procession was not only a civil celebration, but also a religious act of remembrance. Historians argue Etruscan rituals, introduced into Roman practice, forever changed the appearance of festivals. This is how the mystery of triumph was born, where triumph and lulling, joy and measured sorrow were woven into a long, night-like ritual. The close connection with Etruscan culture resulted in the preservation of customs, beliefs, and priestly practices in Rome. Even after the Etruscans left politics, the descendants continued to live among the Romans, enriching the city with their experience and traditions. Vessels with inscriptions in Etruscan are still found in different parts of the city. All this unites modernity and antiquity. past and present for a true history, for sleep is built on centuries of memory. The oldest period, darkness before dawn. How the city was formed. The older a city is, the more fog and mystery there is in its history. Information about the first centuries of Rome's history is as rare as the stars at dawn. Only scraps of inscriptions, such as the famous Renestine fibula and the accounts of Roman historians who lived much later, have survived. There was a time when the hills of Palatine, Asquiline, Quirnal, and Callias were occupied by scattered settlements, groups of huts surrounded by palisades. Between them ran rivers and marshes. Sleeping here was peaceful. The distant sounds of beasts were barely audible to the ears, and the noise of the city forum had not yet made itself known. By the middle of the V century BC, the inhabitants began to descend from the hills and develop the valleys. Thus was born the center of the city, the forum. Archaeologists find traces of cemeteries, ancient craft workshops, tiny altars dedicated to ancestors. Each stone, each urn or fragment of utensils is a part of a great soporific history, where everything slowly obeys the smooth running of time. The name of the city remains a mystery. Some see Greek roots in it, others Etruscan or Italian. Each time to come up with a new version, almost like plunging into a dream, where reality and fiction flow side by side. The royal period. Ways of life, family ties, and power according to legends. The royal period lasted almost 2.5 centuries. It was an era when the life of the city flowed smoothly and unhurriedly, and the authorities and the people were bound by rituals, meetings, and councils. The community was made up of tribes, Latin, Sabine, and Etruscan. They were divided into clans gentes, which were united in curiae. The Council of Elders, the Senate, was the guardian of memory and traditions, and the people as assembly decided the most important issues of city life. At the same time, the king was not an absolute despot. He was chosen and trusted, but his power could be limited sooner or later, as if a tired teacher was handing over his duties to a new generation. A peculiarity of the king's time was the appearance of plebeians. At first they were aliens, descendants of the population conquered or moved to Rome. The tired and poor were more and more numerous. They had personal freedom, but were deprived of political rights. To survive, they became clients of the rich, patrician families. Silent struggle, or how a new society was born. Increasing stratification led to a protracted struggle between the rich and the common people. This struggle, slow, like a creeping evening mist, was the beginning of the reforms attributed to Sergius Tullius. He divided the city into territorial tribes and introduced the famous division into property classes and centuria. Military service, rights, and duties now depended not on origin, but on wealth. The plebeians were given limited, but still access to public life. So the world began to change, throwing off the old, like clothes, patriarchal statutes. The protracted struggle for equalization of rights went on sluggishly, sometimes for centuries, as water sharpens a stone. But step by step, centuria by centuria, the plebs rose in power, achieving their small victories. New habits emerged. Military assembly supplanted curia comitia. Voting took place step by step, slowly but steadily. Gradually, the signs of the patrimonial system disappear and popular offices arise. Instead of kings come elected magistrates. There are colleges of priests. Centuriate assemblies become the main form of peopleless power. The end of the Age of Kings and the birth of the Republic. In 509 BC came the most important event, the expulsion of the last king and the establishment of the Republic. Legends about the heroic deeds of the Roman nobility and ordinary citizens, like dream stories, filled the narratives. The process itself is devoid of haste. Everything happens slowly. Disputes, negotiations, rebellions. The old power was gone, but habits remained. The written laws and traditional codes were carried over into the new era. Priests and magistrates, senators and consuls. All this was connected in the most subtle way with the former patrimonial system, which was only reorganized for new needs. Early development of culture, writing, and education during this quiet, transitional period. The foundations of Latin writing, borrowed from Greek neighbors, were being laid. Examples of letters on stone, on bracelets and on urns have been preserved. The upbringing of children was based on respect for fathers, for customs, for unquestioning discipline. Listening to stories about the most ancient families, every Roman learned to be not only a good son, but also a worthy citizen. Religion was built around guardian spirits, geniuses of the house, penates, statues of the lairs who deified modest family life. Later, Etruscan and Greek influence filled the Roman pantheon with many new deities. Fortuna, Venus, Mars, Minerva, Jupiter Capitolinus. All of them acquired their human form and a special ritual cult. Architecture and art. A slow assertion of beauty and order, the art of ancient Rome slowly matured, absorbing features of the Etruscan and Greek traditions. Architecture, monumental and strict, became an organic part of the state ideology. From city walls to temples, from aqueducts to markets, everything was subject to a sense of proportion and simplicity. Architects used carefully learned Etruscan and Greek techniques, high podiums, clear division of facades, porticos with mosaics, colonnades, and stairs. Many buildings had painted walls, decorated with sculptural medallions, inscriptions, and mythological scenes. Even the smallest detail made its own, albeit a little boring, but important contribution to worldly harmony. Official art was closely intertwined with private demand. The first portraits appeared, realistic bas-reliefs, which depicted not only rulers, but also ordinary citizens, warriors, merchants. The weave of religion and rituals, the lulling rhythm of divine worship. The Romans considered themselves not just a political people, but also chosen to perform endless religious ceremonies. Colleges of priests divided among themselves the union of temples, holidays, and sacrifices. For each craft, each class, there was a patron. Mars was worshipped by warriors, Minerva by artisans, Mercury by merchants. Slaves were distinguished by special altars to Lara, Diana, and the goddess Fortuna, to whom they sought mercy and protection. Gradually, Greek and Eastern gods began to penetrate into the Roman pantheon. Hercules, Heracles, Apollo, Aesculapius, Castor, and Pollux acquiring new functions and features. The Romans adopted not only divine names, but also legends, rituals, even theatrical performances, slowly absorbing everything that could emphasize the significance. Soft ending, a story that continues in a dream. When we recall ancient Rome today, it is as if we are looking at an uneven mosaic of time. Piece by piece, it forms a large-scale picture. This picture includes great architecture, lulling music of temple rituals, protracted reforms, successive rulers, conditional gods, military man, sages. Ancient Rome completed its cycle, giving humanity harmony, peace and faith in eternal continuation. Everything slowly faded into the past. The noise of bazaars, the rumble of chariots, the voices of the Senate, the chants of the gods, they can no longer be heard. But they can be imagined while listening to boring history for sleep. Let this soft and long-playing story help you fall asleep. Let every word of this ancient Rome take you into an enveloping, safe night, where worries dissolve in a foggy infinity, and the events of history lull you like a slow breeze on a summer Roman evening. Good night, time traveler. Boring history for sleep. Ancient Rome. Part 1. History for sweet dreams before you close your eyes. Let go of the day's worries and allow yourself to fall into a light sleep. Let us slowly set off on an extraordinary journey. This journey is not in a hurry. Here time flows differently, slowly, thoughtfully, like a warm stream, peacefully babbling in the silence of the night. Imagine a night in which even the hours pass slowly and the air is filled only with the soft breath of antiquity. Here nothing disturbs the peace, and every sound only enhances the feeling of relaxation. Today's story will be lulling, soft, filled with tranquility, where the movement of centuries easily turns into an endless, viscous dream. We will be transported to a place where history seems to be specially created for sleep, where every event does not shock but lulls. This is boring history for sleep. This is ancient Rome. If you haven't yet clicked on the subscription button and turned on the bell, do it now so that not a single story escapes your collection of daytime and nighttime peace. Such stories really help you sleep deeper, sweetly and comfortably, as if in the arms of time itself. Once upon a time, at the southernmost edge of the Italian lands, where the hills were covered with lush grass and the forests whispered ancient secrets, a modest shepherdess town slowly woke up to life. It was small, almost unnoticeable, but in each of its inhabitants lived an amazing peace, balance, and ancient wisdom. This city, woven from the past, was called Rome, but then few people guessed the fate that was prepared for this modest village. These lands knew no rush. The grass grew slowly, the water flowed softly, and the shepherds watched the white clouds and scattered words like a light evening rain. The city was filled with simplicity, peace, and a welcoming everyday life. Rome was not born quickly. It was a long process, like a fairy tale about the slow maturation of a star or the growth of a large tree. Over time, the city became part of a great story, woven into the fabric of the world like a pattern on an ancient carpet. It all began in the 6th century BC, when Rome submitted to the Etruscans, an ancient people who filled this land with unusual traditions. Time seemed to stand still, leaving only a few monuments, covered by the warmth of the Italian land. These monuments today seem like a part of an alien fairy tale civilization, like a dream that is about to end and dissolve in the morning dew. Over these centuries, life flowed slowly, and changes came like sleepy rains, inexorably but gently. Rome resembled the shadow of a tree at sunset, at first modest, almost imperceptible, and then slowly growing from year to year. Thus arose boring history for sleep, a history for sleep overflowing with peace and leisure. The city of Rome was at the junction of two great worlds. The Etruscans, a mysterious and enigmatic people from the north, and the Greeks, masters of art and words. Everything that happened and seemed to unfold with particular caution and unhurriedness. Thanks to the persistence, patience, and perseverance of the Romans, this small city is gradually freeing itself from foreign power. It is becoming stronger and stronger, and its name is beginning to be heard further and further, deeper, penetrating into the quietest corners of the Apennines. But all this did not happen suddenly. The process went on for hundreds of years. Slow changes touched every village, every field, every old road. Time goes by. Years replace each other like waves carrying sleep to the sandy shore. The nature of this region gave the ancient Romans a special feeling of slowness. When the evenings drag on longer and the dawn hides behind a light haze. By the 3rd century BC, Rome is no longer just a city, but a whole network of connections, roads, habits, and knowledge. Almost the entire peninsula is under its control, quietly and slowly absorbing more and more new lands, breathing in the full aroma of cheerful Italian meadows and steppes. Etruria, devastated by the years, becomes just a part of a huge mosaic, where peace and stability replace anxiety and vanity. Rome, like a lullaby, becomes a Mediterranean power. Its power is strengthened slowly, step by step in the soft rhythm of change. Battles with Carthage turn into a long, soporific fairy tale, where the noise of battle seems distant, vague, like the faint rustle of the wind at night. Each victory is like a smooth verse in this leisurely song. Rome becomes the most significant, the main force of a huge region, where the seasons follow each other leisurely, and people get used to the new order, unhurriedly, trusting the flow of time. The 2nd and 1st centuries BC added new colors to this lulling story. Calmly and majestically, Rome subjugates the cities of the Aegean Sea, the shores of Asia Minor, the lands of Egypt and world culture. Great books, plays, poems, architectural masterpieces are born here. Everything happens with restraint in a rhythm that is ideal for sleep. A new stage begins, slow and soporifically beautiful. Old forms of power become a thing of the past, giving way to a new order. The Republic becomes an empire, majestically, leisurely, without fuss. It was this evening Roman heyday that gave the ancient world the last flesh before the long historical night. The historian Mommsen wrote that when night fell on the Greco-Roman world, nothing human could disperse it. But it was at this moment, in his figurative comparison, that Caesar gave all nations the opportunity to calmly end their evening, to live until dawn without worries and in complete peace. This is the best end to any day and especially to any dream. While your eyelids grow heavy and your thoughts gradually lose their sharpness, boring history for sleep continues to tell its slow story. Let us take a leisurely look into the very essence of ancient Italy. Let the soft story penetrate every corner of your imagination, taking away the fatigue and worries of the day. The Apennine Peninsula stretches between the warm western and eastern seas. Its soft hills and warm wine seem to be created for leisurely walks for reflection, where nothing disturbs the fragile peace. The shores of Italy are washed by the Ligurian, Tyrrhenian and Adriatic seas. Olives and vineyards grow here, and the air is filled with the sounds of crickets and the smell of herbs. Each part of Italy lived in its own rhythm: the south, with its bright sun; the north, with a soft, cool fog; the center, with the rustle of cypresses and the singing wine from the Tiber Valley. People have been living here for thousands of years. First there were hunters and fishermen, then farmers and shepherds. Gradually the cultures changed: the Paleolithic, the Neolithic, the Neolithic. Each stage of history passes like a soft wave of sleep. One is replaced by another, and only peace remains unchanged. Many tribes arise on the peninsula: Italics, Latins, Oscans, Umbrians, Veneti, Saberi. Like night lights in a field, they are scattered throughout Italy, intertwining, disappearing, merging, influencing each other. The name of the Etruscans sounds like a special echo, a mysterious people with a mysterious language and an unusual culture, which is still shrouded in a fog of mystery. But this echo is another gentle note of boring history for sleep. Let their secret, like a soft blanket, cover you on the way to the most peaceful sleep. Let this lulling story about ancient Rome, boring history for sleep, be your companion in the slow transition to sleep. Imagine how time moves slowly, how the last lights of daytime worries softly go out, how they are replaced by an eternal expectation of dawn and complete peace. There is no rush, no worries. Here, only you and a gentle story that turns into an endless sea of sleep. Boring history for sleep. Ancient Rome continues for deep sleep, for true peace. Don't forget to subscribe. There are still so many soft stories for the night and the sweetest dreams ahead. A boring story for sleep. Ancient Rome. Part 2. The Etruscans and Rome on the verge of change. We continue our endlessly calm, meditative story. A story composed specifically to make you relax and imperceptibly fall into the soft embrace of sleep. If you have just joined, be sure to subscribe so as not to miss a real sleepy wandering through the pages of the ancient world. After all, there are still so many amazing details ahead, so many curious and Most importantly, incredibly boring. Stories, especially if it is a boring story for sleep in ancient Rome. We continue our endlessly calm, meditative story, a story composed specifically to make you relax and imperceptibly fall into the soft embrace of sleep. If you have just joined, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on this truly sleepy journey through the pages of the ancient world. There are so many amazing details ahead. So many curious and, most importantly, incredibly boring. Stories, especially if it is a boring story for sleeping in ancient Rome. Having settled in comfortably, close your eyes, tune in to sleep, relax, watch your breathing, and let the words smoothly carry you away through the centuries to where the Greeks, Etruscans, and Romans barely noticed the passage of time. Let us move on to the very beginning. Etruria, the land of fogs and slow days, at the very beginning of our soporific story, when the land of Italy is just beginning to fill with various peoples, the first layers of civilization and antiquity appear. It all begins in Etruria, a mysterious region wrapped in a light pre-dawn fog. Here, among the hills and valleys, the rivers flow slowly, as if even the flow of water is subordinated to the general calm. It was here that the slowest, most inconspicuous, almost insignificant for the course of world events processes unfolded, which, however, will lead Italy to the emergence of one of the most famous empires. But this will be later. And now, in the second part of our big story, boring history for sleep, we read into every detail so that sleep becomes sweet and soft. The language and secrets of the Etruscans. What do we know? One of the most boring, and therefore ideal for sleep, sections of a boring sleep story is the repetitive narrative about something that is still unknown to scientists. For example, the mystery of the Etruscan language for hundreds of years. Scientists have debated whether the Etruscans were an indigenous people or aliens from the East. Their language, consisting of 9 zero-known inscriptions, remained unread for a long time. Most of the texts are inscriptions on urns, vessels, mirrors, slabs, ceramics, soporific monotony. Such and such is the son of such and such. Why is this important for a boring sleep story? It asks simple. The mystery makes the plot soft and elusive. We do not fully know what many of these words meant. We can only guess based on the similarity of alphabets, guesses about grammar, and boring epigraphic studies. Some finds, like the bilingual Etruscan Phoenician inscription at Perge, initially gave scientists hope for deciphering, but science fell silent again, lulled by ambiguities. Knowledge of Etruscan grammar remains fragmentary. Theories are based on guesses and Albanian parallels, where the Etruscan language is closely intertwined with Indo-European and Anatolian influences. Again and again, a boring story for sleep leads us into endless controversial theories, which, in fact, is ideal if you want to fall asleep. The geography of Etruria, long, sleepy descriptions of hills and lakes. The space of Etruria is in no way similar to other regions of the ancient world. This land in the strip between the Tyrrhenian Sea and the mountains preserves a rich variety of landscapes. Vast hills, protracted lowlands, lakes of volcanic origin, and numerous rivers. The humidity and mild climate made the region ideal for the slow development of agricultural culture. The main source of prosperity for the Etruscans was agriculture. Well-developed fields yielded rich harvests of grain, spelt, barley, oats. Flax occupied a special place from which the Etruscans produced strong threads, suitable even for ship sails and sewing durable clothing. The level of agricultural technology was impressive. Artificial canals, drainage, terracing of slopes, plant selection, all this appeared over thousands of years, slowly, step by step. Here, in the slow rhythms of agriculture, the Etruscans bred cattle, pastured sheep, and tended gardens. Cypresses, myrtle, pomegranate, olives, an endless alternation of images of flora and fauna is found in tomb paintings and bronze items. Just listing these details is capable of slowly and inevitably plunging any listener into sleep. The ancient Etruscan home functioned in everyday simplicity. Everything worked harmoniously. Blacksmiths, potters, artisans. The mill creaked, the millstones slowly ground grains, jugs and mirrors were born in the workshops, and everything was imbued with a quiet confidence in the reputability of all affairs. Every morning there was similar work, every evening ended just as quietly and smoothly. Trade, metallurgy, and crafts worked for centuries. The Etruscans left a noticeable mark on the metallurgy of ancient Italy. Mines sank into the ground. Mines gave copper, iron, zinc, silver, and even gold, albeit in smaller quantities. In the monopoly cities of Populonia, Capua, Veii, Felsina, blacksmiths created bronze and iron products, a huge number of brooches, cauldrons, needles, mirrors. Vessels were found in tombs. Armored vehicles kept pace with borrowings from the Greeks, Phoenicians, Egyptians. A boring story for sleep tells. Bronze models of ships, bizarre animals. Objects that traveled across the seas are found in tombs. In Sardinia, Cyprus, Carthage. Trade was lazy along the entire coast and a little further. The Etruscans equipped boats, carried metal, grain, finished products to the east, and in exchange received ceramics, jewelry, glass, amulets. The Greeks on the coast competed for trade, but there were no quick conquests or violent wars. Long, centuries-long competition brought only gradual changes. Even the rivalry between the Greeks and Carthaginians was slow, in keeping with the climate. Within the communities themselves, artisans sometimes united in colleges, ancient analogues of future Roman workshops and guilds. Colleges of artisans, carpenters, metal workers were called upon to protect the interests of free labor from the claims of external competitors. Social structure, noble families, people, slaves. Step by step, as in all ancient societies, the social ladder of the Etruscans was not at all straight. At the top was the noble stratum, originating from ancient families or along the line of an outstanding warrior or priest. Power was concentrated in the hands of the king Lucumen. Around him were the elders and priests of ancient cults. The nobility, elevated above all, was supported not only by economic power and land wealth, but also by the fact that the appearance of the rich was different even after death. Burial mounds, complex tombs with stone slabs, where the name of the noble family was transmitted in a complex system of inscriptions, symbols, paintings on the walls and stones. However, the life of ordinary Etruscans was filled with work, crafts, peasant farming, infantrymen, peasants, poor people, and later slaves. The military class of the nobility often rode on chariots, while the army of commoners went into battle on foot. Ancestral settlements moved from matriarchal family structures, where memory along the Mother S-line was preserved in inscriptions, to a society with a predominance of military-born nobility. With the growth of patriarchal institutions and politics, the Etruscans were famous for their carefully organized rituals and ceremonies in which everyone was woven from the common people to the lords. Among the layers of the dependent population, not only slaves stood out, but also clients, once free people who went bankrupt and became dependent on a powerful patron. In some cases, this dependence was acquired not even because of debts, but as a result of movements, sharp turns in the fate of the family. Etruscan cities, slowly growing. Like stones in the rain, the Etruscans are famous for their cities, built according to strict planning canons. Streets wide enough for the carts to pass each other. An acropolis with temples on a hill, canals, drainage, even their own clay water supply systems. All this did not appear immediately, but over centuries. The largest cities, Veii, Clusium, Volsini, Felsina, eventually formed confederations, unions of 12 cities, where each community remained independent but could gather forces for a common cause. The boundaries of city streets intersected at right angles. Along the paved highways there were houses made of adobe bricks on stone foundations, and the houses themselves were built in the image and likeness of ancient traditions. Slow changes, lasting for centuries, led to the emergence of new customs. Changes in the social structure to the growth or decline of city centers. Each city had its own characteristics. For example, Populonia was known as a metallurgy center, Clusium as an agricultural center, and Sur as a trade and craft center. Cities were built on hills, near water sources, which made it possible to carry out complex engineering work, arrange drainage, drains, and even the first sewage systems for water drainage were assembled. Etruscan religion, gods, omens, cult of ancestors. It is impossible to ignore the religious side of Etruscan life. The Etruscans were among the most religious people of their time. At the head of the pantheon stood Tin, a powerful god, an analog of Zeus or the Roman Jupiter, to whom temples and rituals, sacrifices, and especially important holidays were dedicated. After Tin, the analog of Juno and Minerva, the goddess of crafts and arts, patroness of architects, weavers, blacksmiths, stood out. The cult of the gods among the Etruscans was closely connected with everyday life. Every economic operation, wedding, harvest, even the construction of a house was accompanied by a ritual fortune-telling. sacrifice. The ritual of fortune-telling by the liver of a sheep garish spice became famous thanks to a bronze model of the liver found by archaeologists in Piacenza. Here, as in many other places, a boring story for sleep provides a unique chance to forget for a while in long lists of mythological plots. Endless rituals, names of gods, good and evil spirits. The Etruscans had their own demons, totem creatures, patrons of the house Laces, and logs of the future Roman lairs. Means good and evil, religion closely connected the branches of society. The main priestly establishments were located in large cities. Entry only by family line. Sometimes with an emphasized matriarchal accent, priestesses of the family in separate temples. Burials. Tombs. Art. Eternal silence thanks to the funerary art of the Etruscans. We know a lot about the everyday life and culture of ancient Italy. The tombs of noble families were painted with pictures of everyday life, depicting feasts, dances, husbands and wives, gods, priests and slaves. Sometimes there are scenes of duels between slaves, executions, sacrifices. But most often these are simple stories inspired by the main desire to calm the soul, pass on memory, protect the family. In simple burials there are burial urns, modest personal items, ceramics with scratched names of owners. Social changes, the foundation of new settlements, the development of Rome's internal contradictions, slowly brewing over the centuries, pushed the Etruscans to expand beyond their native land. Something pushed them to separate entire clans, directing them to the north or south, sometimes for trade, sometimes to pacify neighboring tribes, sometimes to found new cities on empty lands. Archaeological evidence suggests that the foundation of the Etruscan layer of Felsina, the future Bologna, occurred slowly. The new colony did not spring up suddenly, but over decades, growing step by step, building by building around ritual temples and cemeteries. Cities grew up in places where roads, bodies of water, and fertile fields conveniently converged. This was also the case in Latium, where in the 68th century BC the Etruscans ruled Rome, a city that was just beginning its great ascent. The Etruscans in Rome. The intersection of cultures and the formation of the future empire. The influence of the Etruscans on the formation of Roman customs and institutions is enormous. It was from the Etruscan heritage that the Romans borrowed priestly colleges, many rules for conducting cults, methods of interpreting banners, and the specifics of funeral ceremonies. The political system of Rome was enriched with Etruscan elements. The institution of the king, In power in the 68th century BC were Etruscan kings, the legendary Tarquins. The structure of priests, the organization of the army, even Roman architecture, engineering, aspects of everyday culture were largely formed under the influence of the lullingly slow, hard-working, almost elusively conservative Etruscan spirit. In the tradition of boring history for sleep, we will not rush things. Let Rome slowly grow, adopt the characteristics of its neighbors, argue with itself, seek its place in the world of ancient Italy. Even the death of the Etruscans was not stormy. Under the onslaught of enemies and as a result of internal contradictions, the cities one after another came under the rule of Rome. So gradually that no one really noticed when one story ended and another began. Everything ends slowly. Here comes to the end of our slow evening story of a boring story for sleep about the land of Etruria and its inhabitants. If you have not yet fallen asleep, let your consciousness dissolve in the details of ancient streets, the outlines of cities reminiscent of forgotten gods and clans. Let your breathing become calmer, thoughts flow more slowly. After all, there are still so many nights and stories ahead, where a boring story for sleep turns from a learned story into a sleepy symphony. Don't forget to subscribe so as not to miss the third part.